Hello again, Gills fans. Welcome back to the latest episode of Gills in the Blood TV. It's Sunday, which of course means it's match day review time. And unfortunately, for the first time this season, we have a reverse to talk about. We went to the Eco Power Stadium on Saturday afternoon, but came away with nothing as Grant McCann's team saw us off by a single goal to nil to replace us at the top of the Sky Bet League Two table. I'm pleased to say that in the absence of co-host Reese, I'm joined today still by a special guest, and that is Ainsley Cooper of the Rambling Rovers podcast. We'll put their details again in the description at the bottom of the video. Was also meant to be joined by Luke as co-host this morning, but he is offline and his phone is off. So we shall roll with just the two of us. Ainsley, first of all, appreciate your time. Welcome to the channel, and obviously a big 3 points for yourself.
Yeah, and it probably, I was expecting a tough game anyway, with how you guys have obviously started the season. I wouldn't say I expected less, because obviously you look at Mark Bonner as a manager and what he's done previously. You know, I fully expected you guys to have a strong start, which you have done. Yeah, it was a bit of a strange game yesterday, because I felt we came out the blocks quite fast in the first half, but yeah, I actually enjoyed the game in a way. It was a bit cagey at times. I think Jordan Gibson for us had a couple of really good opportunities in that first half in particular. He probably should have scored one of them. But equally, I think you guys had a chance with Jack Nolan in that first half as well. From the early stages, bit of sort of figuring each other out. It did feel like a bit of an end-to-end game, although the scoreline doesn't really reflect that.
No, it was a strange old game, and we'll get into the nitty-gritty of what happened and the timeline sort of thing. But if we go back to 2 o'clock, I think team news was fairly unsurprising for Donny. It was an unchanged team from the side that had beaten Port Vale the week before. So Donny lined up with Sharman Lowe in goal, a back four of Sterry, Anderson, McGrath and Fleming from right to left, and then it was Bailey and Westbrook in front, and a trio of Molyneux, Clifton and Gibson supporting Billy Sharp, who we will, unfortunately, from our perspective, have to talk about in a little while. The Gills had to make more changes because of more injuries. So it was Glenn Morris in goal, a back four of Romeo Hutton, the returning Ollie Hawkins, Shadogi and Max Clark. Armani Little captained the side in the absence of Max Ema, and he was partnered in midfield by Ethan Coleman because Robbie McKenzie has now been struck down with an injury. And then it was a trio of Jack Nolan, Jules Lapsley and Jaden Clark, supporting lone frontman Marcus Wiley. I've written down a paragraph, Ainsley. I've put Doncaster ultimately deserved the victory, felt they bossed the first 45 minutes, and although we did well to stay in the game, it was never much more than that. Had more control last 30 minutes, but Doncaster always seemed to have us at arm's length. Is that a fair assessment before we get into the whys and wherefores?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah. I do think you came stronger in the later stages, definitely. Like, we had to absorb a bit of that pressure late on. Probably for the last 15 minutes to half hour, it did feel like you were pushing for that equaliser. But yeah, I'd agree with that assessment. Yeah, I think that's near enough where I was at.
Right, so 3 o'clock game started. First few minutes, I thought it was just two teams that were feeling each other out. Obviously, Donny were going to have more of the ball. They were at home. The home form's absolutely ridiculous, and we'll talk about that at the end of the show, just to give a bit of perspective as well. But I thought we were in our shape fairly well, and the game was played in front of us. And then I think it was about 8 or 9 minutes in, there was a sort of a half chance, but it looked more of a half chance because I think our goalkeeper actually slipped. I think it was Harry Clifton played a ball through to Jordan Gibson, and I think it looked a little bit more exciting than it should have been because our keeper sort of stumbled as he came out, but managed to recover his footing to gather the ball before Jordan Gibson got there. And then again, I thought the game settled into a pattern again. It seemed that Donny were trying to move us from side to side. They were going to keep the ball. They were going to go wide to Gibson, or they were going to go wide to Molyneux, or they could play into the feet of Clifton. I think first half chance was for Gibson, wasn't it? I think Zane Westbrook picked him out. He managed to shift his weight, but he drilled wide from the edge of the box. Maybe could have done better. But how did you feel the first sort of 10, 15 minutes were going from your point of view? Was you happy with the start?
I think I was, because, like I say, I think given the start to the season that you guys have had, and like I say, with an experienced manager like Mark Bonner, I always felt that it wasn't going to be a walk in the park. I always felt that this was going to test our grit, because you obviously, like I said, because of the start you're obviously up there for a reason. And it was sort of, we had to sort of see how we match up against a good informed team. I felt probably similar to you that we were like sort of almost trying to figure each other out for the first 10 minutes or so. And like I say, a couple of good opportunities for us, which I'd say for me, Gibson, with at least one of the opportunities, he should have really put them away. Relatively what I expected.
Yeah, and after that sort of that 20-minute period, I think Gills finally got some sort of foothold in the game, and we had a couple of half chances. They were no more than that. I think there was a foul out on the left. Everyone expected us to load the box and fling a ball into the danger area, but we didn't. We went short, and Armani Little had a shot blocked at Sauce, and it deflected out for a corner. And then I think it was from that corner, delivery was actually good for once, and it wasn't for the rest of the game, sadly, from set pieces and wide areas from our perspective. But I think Jack Nolan put in a ball, and Ollie Hawkins, who was playing centre half, managed to get in front of his man to chest it down to Jack Nolan. I thought it was a really good block from the lad McGrath to just put his body on the line. I think that probably was on target, and dare I say it, I'm not sure Shamolo would have got there if it had not gone past McGrath. So I felt, from our point of view, we were finally sort of not controlling the game, but we were certainly in the game and making sure that Donny knew they were in a game as well. Because like you said, it was similar for both sides. It was a good test against two teams that had started fairly well, and it was a case of who was, if any, going to come out on top. But yeah, that seemed to be it for us for a few minutes again, and then the game reverted into its pattern, which was of you keeping the ball and using it better certainly. And creating more chances. I think, like I say, it felt like it was more even, but after that, you tended to take control again. This was Gibson's big chance, I think, wasn't it? It was your left-back Fleming who got the ball wide, and I think for all the world, people thought he was just going to clip a ball into the box and let people challenge in the area, but he didn't. It was really clever. Drilled it into the feet of Gibson. Wasn't sure, because I was only having to watch it on telly, so I only had one camera, fortunately, but wasn't sure he might have been just offside, but it didn't get flagged. He had good feet, and it took a good save from our keeper to prevent you from taking the lead. So again, you'd got yourselves on the front foot, and it felt like it was you that was creating the more clear-cut openings.
Yeah. I felt before half time in particular, I felt with the pressure that we were putting on. I mean, I thought you guys defended resolutely. There was one period, I can't remember if it was back end of the first half, but we had like several shots which you guys just seemed to block every single one of them. Like there was a plethora of shots in about a 10-second window, and it just kept getting blocked. But it was one of them games. I just feel like, probably from our perspective, I feel we should have probably got another before half time. With the chances we were creating, we probably should have done better with some of the opportunities. I know you touched there on Gibson. Gibson's a brilliant player, but as you'll have probably seen yourself watching the game, there's times when he hangs onto the ball too long. He doesn't make that pass. He doesn't make that decision to get it to somebody in the box. He tries a bit of trickery and cutting inside himself, and then he can get depossessed. So, I think first half there was opportunities for both teams, but I do think in terms of the attacking element, I think we did have the upper hand before the break.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and pretend. There's no point, because people have watched the game. You were much the better side in terms of keeping the football, using the football, pushing us back. We got away with that one.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, from our point of view, we didn't learn. And then a couple of minutes later, it's that man Billy Sharp doing what he's done all his career. And we spoke about him on the preview show that he'd be a danger. Because I'd said to Danny on the preview show that when the signing happened, I wasn't sure it would fit in with what Grant McCann was trying to do, because I thought that you was a side last season that certainly pressed with loads of energy and pressed in packs and pressed high. So my doubt about Sharp was, would the legs be able to do that? But it seems that maybe McCann's tweaks how you play, and also Billy Sharp's tweaks how he plays to allow him to start games in that side. And we know if the ball falls into the box, he's gonna 9 times out of 10 hit the target at worst. And unfortunately, from our point of view, we just didn't deal with it. I think it's Molyneux tries to cross it in from the right hand side. It takes a huge deflection, loops up in the air. From there, we're just too passive. We're too flat-footed. Our right back Hutton doesn't jump with Gibson, allows him to nod it back into the danger zone. Ollie Hawkins, who granted hasn't played centre-back a lot for us, I think has to do more. He lets Billy Sharp swivel, and he lets Billy Sharp have a sight of goal, which you can't do. And despite being 37, 38, he still knows where the back of the net is. And it's a good finish, don't get me wrong. It's a smart turn and finish on the sort of half volley. But from our point of view, I thought it was very, very poor. How did you see it?
It's difficult because obviously where I sit, it was at the other end of the stadium. I mean, I had a straight-on view of it, but because of the distance.
Of course.
But from where I was sat, it was very much a Billy Sharp goal that we would have seen 10 odd years ago when he was last with us. He did that several times, and like when he was with us when we were in the Championship, those types of goals, a swivel and turn and the shot. He did that numerous times with us previously. So yeah, I think the deflection obviously probably unlucky from your perspective, but I thought the awareness from Gibson to get that nod down and put it into Sharpie, and I think it's difficult because one of our centre halves, Tom Anderson, he got interviewed after the game, and he got asked about obviously the goal that Sharpie scored, and he got asked how do you defend against that, and he said it's tough. He said because players like Billy Sharp, who've done it all their careers, you can be one of the best defenders in this league, but you can't really defend against that. The way he does it, the way how he turns so quick and gets a shot off so fast, it's hard to defend against. So, and I can sort of see that.
Question. Yeah, that's fair enough. Because like I say, I think what we all tend to do, don't we, Ainsley, is I think we all try and pick holes in our own team, and sometimes, and I've said this before, sometimes we just have to say, the other team's done well. But I just thought maybe not hawking so much, but I think we can engage better when the ball drops out the sky and stop the header coming back into the 6-yard box. But we all know the quality of Billy Sharp at the end of the day, don't we?
Yeah, he is a rarity at this level. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I still felt that he could still be playing League One in reality, but there's not many players who will do that in this division. He's a bit of a Rolls Royce in League Two. It's a bit like Bradley Dack for you guys. Yeah. I appreciate that he's not had. I know I've been reading a lot that he's not quite at the fitness level yet, but he'll get there. And Bradley Dack at League Two, similar to Sharpie, it is a bit of a cheat code, really.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping, and obviously, and Dackie's got 7 years on Billy Sharp, and Billy Sharp's here week in, week out, and unfortunately, there would seem to be a little. I'm not sure. I think someone said he just might have felt his hamstrings. They didn't want to risk it. That's why he was replaced on the bench. But it's a shame because we could have probably done with someone like Dackie coming on last 15, 20 minutes. Might have been able to pick a pass and unlock that defence when we were chasing the game. But I'd rather miss him for one game now than push him and then we end up losing him for 3 months or something like that. So, but back to the game, I thought after that, Gills suddenly needed half time. We looked rattled by conceding. I think we were giving up territory. We were giving up possession too easily. I think there was another chance, wasn't there? A half chance. Corner came in. Our keeper come and punched it, and Molyneux showed great awareness to try and lob it back in. But luckily, from our point of view, it landed on the net rather than in the net. And then I thought, this was probably the best chance of the half. I thought this was probably an easier chance for Billy Sharp than the one he scores. I think it's Bailey this time is allowed too much time to cross. Billy Sharp gets in between his centre halves and somehow manages to miss the target from about 7 yards, which isn't what Billy Sharp tends to do, is it? Like I said, it's 9 times out of 10 he hits the target. Luckily for us, that was the 10th occasion. But I think if it had gone to 2-0, we'd have really struggled to get back in the game. But you must have been pleased with that first 45 minutes against a side, like you say, that were top of the table coming into the fixture. Yeah,
I was. Yeah, I felt that you definitely came out stronger second half, which, to be honest, I fully expected. I don't think Mark Bonner would have sat on his hands and sort of accepted it. You came out stronger in the second half without doubt, and I think we had a couple of minutes where we had to just sort of get to grips with it again, and then obviously sort of the two teams are sort of to and fro in between each other. I thought the header from Sharp you're referring to, I was stood up. Everybody was stood up. Everybody thought it was going in, from the angle because it was. But it was again. I felt like you guys did really well to sort of crowd us out. Restrict how much we were able to sort of move into positions and it felt like at times like you had a straight line in front of your goal, which we just couldn't penetrate. Like I say, there was a plethora of shots at one stage where I'm amazed we didn't at least score from one of them. But it felt like you were very strong defensively. Like barring the Billy Sharp goal, we had to work for it. It wasn't a straightforward. It was a polar opposite to when we played Port Vale, for example.
Okay. No, generally we've been decent defensively for the last few years. Even that season when we couldn't score a goal for the first half, we were still in games. But unfortunately, when you score 6 in 23, you know that as soon as you've conceded, that is the end of the football match, unfortunately. But yeah, I think we can be better away from home. Certainly, I'm not going to sit here and pretend it was a great performance or a good performance, but I think what we do well is we do stay in football matches. But like I said at the beginning, that's what it felt like. It felt like we were working very hard just to be in the game rather than working very hard to get control of the game and boss the game, which is why I think ultimately we didn't do enough to get anything out of it. He spoke about Mark Bonner, said he weren't just going to sit there and not try and alter things, and he didn't. He made a change at the break. Elliot Nevitt came on for his first league minutes of the season, another one who's missed loads of game time through injury, unfortunately. He replaced Marcus Wiley. First thing he did was got the most stupid booking I've seen certainly this season so far. So tried to run round, I think it might have been Sterry, the right back.
Yeah.
Lost the ball, fell over, and then decided just to flick a leg out and stop him from running away from him and got a yellow, which was absolutely justified. Sadly, from our point of view, I think it hindered how Nevitt had to play the game then, because we know he wants to be, in centre-backs' faces and he wants to engage in battles, and that meant that he had to almost play within himself, it felt, from my point of view. So that made it a little bit easier for yourselves in that sense. You then hit the crossbar. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say Molyneux meant it, but it was good feet to shift his weight past our left back, and he's trying to, I think you can see what he's trying to do. He's trying to clip it far post, but it sort of hits the face of the crossbar, and luckily for us, it goes away to safety. And then our keeper kept us in it again. Ball into the middle of the box. I think that it was Bailey that shifted his feet. And luckily, from our point of view, like I say, Morris was very alert. I mean, I think he's now officially our oldest ever player, 40 years and so many days, but doesn't look any different to what he did 5, 6, 7 years ago when he was winning all them Player of the Year awards with Crawley Town. Come out, was really big and managed to keep us in the game. But again, it felt us. This is what I keep writing down. We were doing stuff just to stay in the match.
Yeah.
Was there any point from a Doncaster point of view, though, Ainsley, where you're thinking, is this actually not going to be our day? Are we going to miss these chances and it's going to come back and bite us on the backside?
Yeah, I did. I felt like that a couple of times, to be honest. I just, like I say, and I don't want to come across like disrespectful. I feel if it wasn't for your defence and how solid you were defending against us, on another day, I feel with the opportunities we had, it could have been 2 or even 3. But I felt like we had to really work to get through your back line. And I was sort of questioning at 1-0, sort of heading into the later stage of the game. I'm thinking, well, I feel uncomfortable with it just being 1, because I felt like there was always that chance that you could equalise. I know you were limited on opportunities, but the opportunities you did have were quite well taken. So I think for me, it was just, I think more towards the back end of the second half when you really started to put the pressure on in the last sort of 20 minutes, half hour. That took a few nerves because it felt like we were having to really put 10 men behind the ball at that stage and just see the result out, which time's gone by. We've not always managed to do that. So I'm happy to see that we managed to stay solid at the back. And you mentioned Jay McGrath earlier. He's been a standout centre half for us. He came through our academy, and McCann brought him back last season. He'd been playing in Ireland, but he's just been outstanding for the lad's age, and he's only in his early 20s, but the maturity he shows, at times, he's outplayed, the likes of Tom Anderson. He's looked the better of the two, and Tom Anderson's played at the top end of League One with us. So it's good. It's good that we've managed to keep that clean sheet and get the 3 points, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. And sometimes you have to just do that other side of the game, don't you? You just have to, like you say, just bank in and just be resolute, like you said. And again, you had something. The difference was you had a lead to protect once you banked in. We felt like we were banking in to prevent it from going to 2-0. But you talk about worrying that there was going to be a big chance. I think it came shortly after Bailey's chance from our point of view. And again, I think it was probably only one of two well-delivered set pieces from us. I think it was Romeo Hutton, corner from the near side as I was watching, in swinging. And I think Shamal Lowe come to try and punch it, got a bit of a hand on it, but it didn't really go anywhere.
No.
Ollie Hawkins, who was up from centre-back, reacted really well and managed to get his right foot through it. And I think, so that would have been at your end, I think, second half. We were shooting towards your end. So I don't know what your view was, but for me, it looked like it was going in. And I think it was Molyneux, actually, to be fair, who showed great awareness to get back towards the line and stick a leg out to stop it from going, certainly towards goal, maybe in the goal. And then you don't know, do you? The old sort of complexion of the game changes. But it was great to see from, I suppose, from a Donny perspective, that you've got attacking players that are willing to be alert defensively as well.
Yeah, I think we've seen that in a couple of games. To be fair, McCann has this mantra of attack as a team, defend as a team sort of thing. And we've seen that a few times. I think it was a good opportunity from your perspective. We look last season, we probably wouldn't have won that game. Being really honest, we probably wouldn't have done. Defensively, we weren't great start of last season. I'd say the turnaround, having so many options. I think two players in every position near enough. It's and players who can perform at first team level. You feel like you've got 2 11s really, and it's reassuring, especially when we've got a couple of injuries already, and I know you've got injuries as well. So it's nice that we've got those options. I think we had to ride it out. I think the second half, it felt like, well, you changed your shape, I think, but it felt like you got bigger as well.
Yeah,
like you were covering more areas of the pitch, so we had to sort of combat that. And I think we felt that a bit when you did start to expand and get bigger across the pitch, because that was sort of the period when we were on the sort of back foot a bit, and we had to sort of defend resolutely and just see the result out. But no, you know what? It was a good game. Two good sides who I think are definitely going to be up there at the end of the season. I predicted us. I think I predicted us in the playoffs or sneaking into third. But it's a good yardstick for us to see where we are, I think.
And likewise us as well, yeah. And you talk about that squad, and obviously the first change you made is a nice one to be able to make. Billy Sharp lasts an hour, scores his goal. Yeah. And then you bring on last season's top scorer, I think, in Joe Ironside, who got 14, 15 in the league last season. So that's not a bad change to make. We made a couple of alterations as well. Ethan Coleman had run his race. I think getting through an hour was admirable, considering he's not played any league football so far this season. Looked rusty, which is understandable. He was taken off along with Jaden Clark. We brought on Johnny Williams and Jacob Wakelin. At that stage, though, we'd not changed the shape, I don't think. It was still, we were trying with this 4-2-3-1. And then I thought the game just went a little bit quiet for a period of time. It was like we were adjusting to our substitutions. Donny were probably starting to think, at least subconsciously, right, we're going to sit on this 1-0 lead and maybe start taking what we've got rather than pushing too high for the second. Yeah. We then made more changes. George Lapsley was withdrawn. Josh Andrews come on, and you talk about us getting bigger and trying to make the pitch bigger. We certainly got bigger in terms of physicality, because we now had Nevitt and Josh Andrews, who are both 6'5", big focal point type centre forwards. We went to a basic 4-4-2, which I think sort of told everyone how we was going to try and play the game in the last period. You then countered that, took off, I think it was Gibson and Westbrook, and replaced them with, again, two ridiculous substitutes. Carl Hurst is a decent League Two player, and then you've got Ben Close, who was, I think Ben Close scored the winner against us last season at your place, didn't he? Absolute belter.
Yeah, he scored a worldie, didn't he? Yeah, he scored a worldie.
About 3 minutes to go, unfortunately. I was there for that one as well. I think the only silver lining yesterday was that I could just turn my telly off, whereas everyone else had to get back on a coach or a train. But so it was just, again, it was teams just adjusting to the game situation, it felt, for a period of time. Like I say, we were very sort of obvious in what we were going to try and do. We got two big men up front, and we was going to try and probably get balls into the box. Whether that actually happened with any degree of quality, I'm not really sure. But we were seeing more of it. And I felt at the time, and I think Mark Bonner, our manager, said afterwards, we just felt too frantic, though, too frenetic. We didn't seem to play with a plan in the final 15 minutes. Excuse me. How did you feel from a Doncaster perspective, seeing us go to 4-4-2? Because it didn't feel like, despite having, like I say, them two target men on in Nevitt and Andrews, we had Shad Ogie and Ollie Hawkins, two massive centre halves to target when the ball came into the box if we had corners or free kicks or throw-ins. I never felt that the delivery or the from wide and them set plays was good enough to really trouble you, unfortunately.
No, probably not. I mean, I don't know if it's just me. I always get a bit of a tingle when like an ex-player comes on. Obviously, Josh Andrews, we saw very little of him, but I always felt that he would, when fully fit, he could be a really good player at this level. Unfortunately, we only saw 1 or 2 appearances from him.
That's been our issue as well. We signed him; he was injured. Like he arrived with a hip problem.
Yeah.
Then he played 45 minutes in a B game, scored, and apparently was brilliant. And then had to come off at half time. So we only saw him probably 3 times last season.
Yeah.
And I think we saw him 45 minutes in pre-season until last week.
Yeah. I get what you mean about you didn't seem to have a plan or whatever. I think at that point, I think your player's mentality was just just go forward at all costs. I think it was almost desperation in the end. You were wanting that point. Like I say, I think we had to dig really deep towards the back end. I mean, when we brought on Joe Olowu and took off, I think it was Molyneux. That sort of said where we were at for me, to just defend that lead. Which, like I say, we did do. I mean, you mentioned Kyle Hurst as well, another player which I agree with what you said. Some of our fans don't feel he's physically enough for this league. I know there was a couple of occasions yesterday when he did get bullied off the ball because he's not the most physical. But I think for Kyle Hurst, for me, I mean, I really rate the lad. I think he's got a lot of technical ability. He's very good on the ball. He's got a lot of trickery about him. Probably does need a bit more physicality in his game, but McCann's sort of moved him from a wide position. He's put him into a central position. I know he was sort of out wide yesterday, but McCann's experimented with him in midfield, which is the first time he's played there this season, and he's done okay. He's looked good there. He's looked comfortable. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, I feel like our midfield is really stacked at the minute. Like you mentioned, some of the players there. Zane Westbrook, Ben Close. You've got Joe Sabara. You've got Clifton. You've got Bailey. It's I think it'd be interesting to see, how that midfield molds. We're still making changes a lot, in terms of starting lineups. I think McCann's been experimenting a bit since the start of the season. And I think Ben Close, because he's come back from injury, I think he was always going to come on yesterday because McCann was determined to bring him on against Everton. But because we had an injury to, was it now? I think it was Nixon. Everton, we had to basically do a different substitution because of the injury. So Ben Close was always going to get minutes yesterday, I think, and he didn't do too bad. It's a frustrating one because it feels like we've had him forever. He's been with us for 3 years and we've seen very little of him. He's got a 2-year deal now, so I think it's important we get the minutes out of him this season and see how he comes on.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, with big injuries like that, you have to just bear with them, don't you? There's no point trying to push them too early. And similar to us, like we said with Bradley Dack, you might have to see little of them for a period of time to get the best out of them further down the line, rather than overexerting them now and then risk them breaking down again. But yeah, it's just one hell of an option from the bench at worst, isn't it? And yeah, we'll talk about your squad in a little while. You mentioned the Molyneux withdrawal. I think that was definitely the point where you said, right, we're settling for 1-0, brought Oluwu on. We made one more change. I think it was Nolan off, who for me was non-existent in the game. Joe Bode came on, who wasn't even in the squad originally. I think we had one final half chance at best. I think there was a corner. It got cleared to the edge of the box. Armani Little, I thought, was probably one of our better players on the day in terms of all energy. Wanted to do what, not wanted. He did want to do everything. You could tell because he was captain that he was wanting to make an impression. Again, maybe at times he was a little bit too frenetic and frantic. But I'm not going to have a go at someone for wanting to get the ball all the time and trying to make things happen. I think he picks the wrong option. We have the likes of Nevitt, Andrews, Ogie, Hawkins all in the box from the corner, and I think the percentage players get it back into the danger zone because it might just drop for someone. But he goes for goal and it goes just over. It's never going in, unfortunately. And shortly afterwards, the full-time whistle went. And
yeah,
I've got no issue with the result. Like I've said already, I don't think we did enough to win the football match. I don't think we did enough to get anything out of the football match. We always felt to be at full tilt just to stay with you.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that you were miles better than us for 90 minutes, but I just felt in the key moments and the big moments, you were much better in your composure and your execution and everything. And yeah, thoroughly deserved the points. So a huge 3 points, like we say, for you guys. I've seen a few bits on social media. I'm sure Donny fans are the same when you lose.
Yeah.
I think it's always a case of trying to remain level-headed rather than trying to get too high. Like we weren't going to win the league just because we beat Carlisle first day of the season.
Yeah.
Losing to Donny doesn't mean that we can't win the league or get promoted at the same time.
Yeah.
I've seen some Gills fans say that we were garbage, that we've got people that can't step up. I totally disagree with that to the individual, because this was a team that had to battle at 1-0 and 2-1 against Carlisle a few weeks ago and ended up winning 4-1. We had to go to Morecambe in a tight game and we stepped up to find a goal. We went to Fleetwood and were second best with half a team missing and managed to dig in and get a point. We stepped up for our... Excuse me, sorry. There's bloody cold in my head in.
I've got it as well, though.
We stepped up against Chesterfield, played with 10 men for half hour last week against one of the best sides in the division in terms of keeping the football. I think were brilliant. So it's one of them games, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's two good sides. You were better than us on the day. It's not going to define anyone's season, is it?
No, I think it's easy to have these knee-jerk reactions. I call them knee-jerk reactions after games. I at times I do it, and I know I do, but yeah. I think it's a typical football fan. I don't think look, we were poor against Newport the other week. Absolutely, completely different sort of game to what we saw against Accrington Stanley, and in the first game of the season. Yeah, I think the thing for me, particularly yesterday, was there's been this emphasis, and you'll have probably, if you've sort of kept across Donny, you'll have seen this yourself. But there's been occasions this season and some of last season where we've done really well in the first half, and we've come out in the second half, and for whatever reason, that initial 10 minutes in the first part of the second half, we just seem to be all over the place. Yeah. And we were like that against Accrington in the first game of the season. We were 1-0 up or something, and then we had full control of the game, and then first 10 minutes of the second half, we just let them get back in so easily. Yeah. But that spurred us on to then beat them 4-1. And then the week after, we went to Newport, the exact same thing happened, but the polar opposite in the second half, where we didn't get that rocket that we needed when they scored. We just collapsed, and they put another 2 past us. So it's there'll be ups and downs in the season. And, people have this ideology that, it's going to be easier this season because there's no Wrexham, there's no Stockport, no Mansfield. I disagree. There's so many big spenders in this league. Port Vale haven't started clicking yet, but you look at the team they've got. There's tough competition in this league.
They clicked yesterday, to be fair.
They did yesterday.
I think it was 4-1. Yeah, they finally.
Do you know what I mean? It's going to be a tough league this season. It is going to be tough. There's a lot of teams that are going to fancy themselves to be up there. Obviously, Gills being one of them. So yeah, look, it's early days yet. We're not even 10 games in yet. I would say, the first 10 games, that's sort of where you start to get some idea of where you're at.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, and it took us more than half a season last year to get going. So,
it was absolutely ridiculous run, wasn't it? That got you into the playoffs last season. Yeah. I just wanted to ask you about that, because people are saying, again, it goes back to the point about the Gills fans' reaction, but people have to forget this is. Where did I write it down? I've written it down somewhere. I think Donny have won, aside from the playoff semi-final defeat against Crewe, you've won 11 league games on the bounce at the Eco Power, going back to the end of January. Yeah.
So this is another thing, is that obviously, I don't know if you know about this, last season when we were sort of chasing the playoffs, after we got ourselves together, if you like. McCann had this mini table set up in the dressing room, and he was saying to the fans about it, and it was like, used as motivation for the players. You know, that's how far off we are. That's how far off we are. And he does this. And I've no doubt in my mind McCann would have been reminding those players yesterday. Look, we've got an excellent record at home. Stemming back to last season, don't lose it today. You know, this is a tough team. This is probably going to be one of the toughest tests we have in the early stage of the season. You know, make sure we do the business today. And I fully expect that from McCann, because he has these little targets and these little sort of tables and things that he's got set up. So I've no doubt in my mind, you know, he did put a lot of emphasis on that yesterday. Given how we finished last season, it was important for us to keep the momentum from last season. Although we've made a fair amount of changes, not as many changes as last summer, where we brought in like 13, 14 players, but we have made a decent amount of changes. New players coming in, experienced players leaving, such as, you know, your Tommy Rose and your John Taylors, etc. So yeah, it was important for us to keep the momentum. I feel like we've had the odd blip, but yeah, you know, it's looking good at the minute. I'm looking forward to seeing where we end up sort of around Christmas time.
Absolutely, like you're saying, it goes back to 5 games in. It's the league table's going to change. Like you say, you can lose, you win a game, you can end up jumping 5 or 6 places. You lose. We dropped to 4th in one afternoon. But with a draw, we end up 2nd again or something. So it's so easy to get sort of lost in an early season table. And you mentioned people that were unavailable for yourselves. I just want to, not to make excuses, but we've had 35 players unavailable across 5 league games so far. So that's 7 a game. And I think only 2 of them are because of suspension. So, which you'd say is your own doing, silly red cards and that type of thing. That's not an excuse. That's why you build a squad. I understand that. But Gills, I don't think, has been at full strength at all for any of these 5 games. And we've played you, Chesterfield, Carlisle United, who are probably 3 teams that were in top 6 in terms of betting to go up. We're taking 6 points from 9 against them 3 teams. And we've lost a game 1-0. It's not like we've gone and got rolled over 5 or 6. Then I'd understand it. We've taken 2 points a game in that period as well. So I'm not going to sit here and, you know, panic because we've lost 1 football match. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and say yesterday was good, because it wasn't. We weren't good enough. You deserved the points, absolutely. I want to talk about your squad, because I know you've said it, Danny said it on the preview about midfield options, but it's a ridiculous squad for the level. Like, it's been built really well. I'm not saying you spent loads of money, but I think Grant McCann's recruited really well. He's been backed by the owners, I think it's fair to say. Joe Sabah is a player that I've liked for 3, 4, 5 seasons, watching him on the telly with Solihull, and was at the playoff final, the National League playoff final at the end of last season when they lost to Bromley. He's not even been getting in your matchday squad sometimes, has he? So that's the strength in depth, that you can bring in a player of that quality. He didn't get on yesterday. Like, to have that depth at the moment already, and like you say, you've got new players settling in, must be really, really encouraging to be top. Again, with the caveat that we know it could change with 1 defeat. But to have 12 points from 5 games, where you're trying to embed players in, you've got some missing, you must be really excited, like you say, and you've already sort of touched on it. But is automatic promotion ultimately the aim for Donny this season, based on how you finished last year?
It's certainly the aim for Grant McCann. Grant McCann's aim is to win the league. He's made no bounds about that. You know, he wants to be winning the league. That is the ultimate aim for him. I think for me, I'd love automatic promotion. Don't get me wrong, but you know, I know you touched on it there. You know, we've not spent loads and loads of money. Obviously, we'll be spending a fair amount on wages for the likes of Billy Sharp. And I'd imagine Ben Close and Zane Westbrook, they'll be on decent wages for the level. So I just think there's some ridiculous recruitment that's gone on this summer with numerous teams. And like I say, there's a good 10, 15 teams that will fancy themselves to be up there. And they can't all be up there, but the quality that's been recruited, I mean, like I touched on it before, you know, Port Vale, I mean, I know it felt like we dominated them for large periods of that game, but it felt like they hadn't clicked at that point. And like you say, they got a result yesterday. They've got a ridiculous squad there. You know, Jaden Stockley, George Byers could still be playing at the top end of League One. You know, so there is some really good recruitment in League Two this season, and it you know, I said playoffs just based on there's so many other teams in there who have spent big money and brought in these, you know, luxury players, if you like. So it's going to be highly competitive this season. But I wouldn't say it's time to panic at all. Obviously, I know you said about some of your fans. You know, I think the key there is that you've already touched on. You've had all these injuries, but to keep it at 1-0, and I know it's still a loss, but you know, goal difference makes an impact. You know, towards the back end of the season, and if you don't have a fully fit squad and you can see games out at just a 1-0 defeat rather than being pegged, you know, 3 or 4, you know, that I see that as a positive. If you can keep teams at arm's length and you know, limit opportunities, which I felt you did do with us yesterday. I know we had a couple of good opportunities, but it felt like you defended really well. I'd say the defence for you was the highlight for me. You know, we had to really work for that result. So it's early days. You'll get players coming back from injury. We'll get players coming back from injury. I mean, we're missing James Maxwell at the minute, who was massive for us last season. So yeah, no time to panic for me. I think, you know, it's a long old road ahead yet. So yeah, I think come the end of the season, you know, I fully expect Gills to be up there. I don't think that, you know, this result is going to be season defining in any way, shape, or form.
Absolutely not. Like we said earlier, it's 5 games in, isn't it? It's a long road. I think we're 9% into a season. There's going to be plenty of bumps along the way, and we're going to lose more football matches, and we'll probably win matches playing worse, and we'll probably lose matches playing better. That's the nature of the beast, unfortunately. But yeah, it was a game that was tighter than, I don't know. It was a funny game for me. Like, if you look at it, you go, "Oh, it was a tight game. It was only 1-0." But I thought in terms of control of the game, you were a lot better than us. We just didn't get our players that we needed to get into the game. Like Jack Nolan, I thought was very poor on the afternoon. Who's come with a big reputation.
Yeah.
Lots of good numbers last season, but just certainly away from home for me is flattered to deceive a little bit at the moment. But has got a goal and an assist already in 5 games, so you can't complain too much. And again, it comes back to what you said about trying to embed people in and new groups of players and that type of thing. I think we've covered everything.
Yeah.
It was like we've said, it's not a game that's going to determine where either team finishes this season. No. It's a game that was between 2 good sides at the top of the table, and unfortunately, from a Gills point of view, we came out on the wrong side of it. So good luck to Doncaster and fair play on the 3 points. As always, thanks for watching. I'm trying to do this without coughing. As always, like I say, appreciate all the support. If you're still listening at this stage, then thank you very much. Please hit the like button. Please consider to hit that subscribe button. It is free to do so. And we will be back later in the week with a match preview ahead of next week's game against Tranmere. And of course, we'll be back in the Priestfield Stadium next week for a match day live. Once again, thanks to Ainsley for his time. Until next time, up the Gills.